I did have the privilege of visiting the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles. The center is a Jewish organization that fights against anti-Semitism and all bigotry around the world. The purpose of the center is to sound the alarm whenever hatred occurs, and not just to Jews, but to everyone, including the Muslim and African American communities for starters. The Simon Wiesenthal Center teaches education, tolerance, and human dignity. I spoke with renowned Rabbi Marvin Hier to get his reaction on anti-Muslim sentiment in the U.S. these days. And I first asked Rabbi Hier about President Trump's so-called Muslim travel ban.
I'm against the Muslim registry, as I would be against the Jewish or Christian registry, because of our long history where that leads to, not only in the Holocaust and during the Middle Ages. And therefore, I recognize, of course, that these are turbulent times. Terrorism is a huge problem. But the fact of the matter is that the United States is the greatest democracy on the planet, and we have to honor what our democracy stands for, which is freedom and the right to be different, to practice different religions. And therefore, any general rule, even though the ban, President Trump has said, is not against all Muslims, and that is true. It's a ban of 7 nations. Nonetheless, it included people with a green card. It included women and children. And therefore, I spoke out against it.
Do you believe that Muslims in the United States are being targeted by this administration?
I don't believe that this was a ban against all Muslims, because it isn't. But it can be construed that way. When you have a green card, you should be able to come back to the United States immediately without any problems at all. So it didn't make any sense that this was done, and I wish it would not have been done. Having said that, let me say the other side of what I know. Many people around the world take it for granted that what we have is about 10, 20, or 30,000 fanatics around the world. These are people that are members of ISIS, they're members of Al-Qaeda, and these are the people we have to worry about. That is not true. There is a Pew study where the Pew study tells us the sad fact. According to this study in 2015, 7% of the world's 1.6 billion Muslims, 7%, sympathize with the idea of suicide attacks and fighting in that manner against innocent civilians. That would amount to about 112 million people. If we have 112 million people that side with the jihadists, that is a world catastrophe. And that has to be highlighted. And the overwhelming majority of Muslims in the world reject that, do not want that kind of a philosophy. Nonetheless, they must take this as a challenge, and they must do everything they can to put down this 7% that can endanger the future of all of mankind.
Your Simon Wiesenthal Center, your Museum of Tolerance, has dedicated its existence to the human rights of not just Jews, but to the human rights of all. How does one walk the fine line in being sensitive to the needs of Muslims, but also saying we need to fight radical Islamic terrorism?
By telling the truth, that that's the way it is. The Muslim Brotherhood nearly destroyed Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood is in charge of Gaza, because Gaza is Hamas. Hamas is dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel. That must be faced. They're not only a danger to some local city, they are a danger to all of mankind.